Hello everybody, welcome to the fifth video of Four Corners of the Earth. Hope you're all doing well. I'm going to continue reading the Bible. We left off on Genesis chapter 29, and I believe it's going to be the continuation of the story of Jacob. And so if you please will follow along with your own Bibles, or just listen to the audio or watch the video. Here we go. Chapter 29 of Genesis. After that, Jacob resumed his journey and traveled on to the land of the people of the east. Now he saw a well in the field and 3 droves of sheep lying down next to it, because they usually watered the droves from the well. There was a large stone over the mouth of that well. When all the droves had been gathered there, they rolled away the stone from the mouth of the well, and they watered the flocks, after which they returned the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. So Jacob said to them, "My brothers, what place are you from?" To which they said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" To which they said, "We know him." At this he replied to them, "Is he well?" They replied, "He is well, and here is his daughter Rachel coming in with the sheep." Then he said, "Is it still the middle of the day? It is the time for gathering the herds. Water the sheep, and then go feed them." To this they said, "We are not allowed to do so until all the droves have gathered and they roll the stone away from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." While he was yet speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, Jacob immediately approached and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and raised his voice and burst into tears. And Jacob began to tell Rachel that he was the relative of her father and that he was the son of Rebekah. And she ran off and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the report about Jacob, the son of his sister, he ran to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him into his house. And he began to tell Laban all these things. Laban said to him, "You are indeed my bone and my flesh." So he stayed with him all full month. Laban then said to Jacob, "Just because you are my relative, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me, what are your wages to be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger Rachel. But the eyes of Leah had no luster, whereas Rachel had become a very attractive and beautiful woman. Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel, so he said, "I am willing to serve your 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." To this Laban said, "It is better for me to give you to you than to give her to another man. Keep dwelling with me." And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, but in his eyes they were just like a few days because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give over my wife, my days are up, and let me have relations with her." With that, Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. But during that evening, he restored to taking his daughter, Leah, and bringing her to him that he might have relations with her. Laban also gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a servant. In the morning, Jacob saw that it was Leah. So he said to Laban, "What have you done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why have you tricked me?" To this Laban said, "It is not our custom here to give the younger woman before the firstborn. Celebrate the week of this woman. After you will also be given this other woman in exchange for serving me 7 more years." Jacob did so, and celebrated the week of this woman, after which he gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. Besides, Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her servant. Then Jacob had relations also with Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served him for another 7 years. When Jehovah saw that Leah was unloved, he then enabled her to become pregnant, but Rachel was barren. So Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son and named him Reuben, for she said, "It is because Jehovah has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will begin to love me." And she became pregnant and gave birth to a son and then said, "It is because Jehovah has listened in that I was unloved, so he gave me this one also." Then she named him Simeon. And she became pregnant yet again, and gave birth to a son, and then said, Now this time my husband will join himself to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore he was named Levi. And she became pregnant once more, and gave birth to a son, and then said, This time I will praise Jehovah. She therefore named him Judah. After that she stopped giving birth. Chapter 30. When Rachel saw that she had borne no children to Jacob, she became jealous of her sister and began to say to Jacob, Give me children, or else I will die. At this, Jacob's anger flared up against Rachel, and he said, Am I in the place of God who has prevented you from having children? So she said, Here is my slave girl Bilhah. Have relations with her in order that she may bear children for me, and that through her I too may have children. With that she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob had relations with her. Bilhah became pregnant, and in time bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has acted as my judge, and also listened to my voice, so that he gave me a son. That is why she named him Dan. Bilhah, Rachel's servant, became pregnant once more, and in time bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, With strenuous wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister. I have also come off the winner. So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. And Leah's servant Zilpah bore a son to Jacob. Then Leah said, With good fortune. So she named him Gad. After this, Zilpah, Leah's servant, bore a second son to Jacob. Then Leah said, With my happiness, for the daughters will certainly pronounce me happy. So she named him Asher. Now Reuben was walking in the days of the wheat harvest, and he found mandrakes in the field. So he brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, Give me please some of your son's mandrakes. At this she said to her, Is it a small matter that you took my husband? Would you now take my son's mandrakes also? So Rachel said, Very well. He will lie down with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. When Jacob was coming from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, It is with me you are going to have relations, because I have hired you outright with my son's mandrakes. So he lay down with her that night. And God heard and answered Leah, and she became pregnant, and in time bore to Jacob a 5th son. Then Leah said, God has given me my wages, because I have given my servant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. And Leah became pregnant once more, in time bore a 6th son to Jacob. Then Leah said, God has endowed me, yes, me, with a good endowment. At last my husband will tolerate me, for I have borne him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. Afterward she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. Finally, God remembered Rachel, and God heard and answered her by enabling her to become pregnant. And she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. Then she said, God has taken away my reproach. So she named him Joseph, saying, Jehovah is adding another son to me. After Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob immediately said to Laban, Send me away so that I may go to my place and to my land. Give over my wives and my children from whom I have served with you, that I may go, for you well know that I have served you. Then Laban said to him, If I have found favor in your eyes, I have understood by the omens that Jehovah is blessing me because of you. And he added, Stipulate your wages to me, and I will give them. So Jacob said to him, You know how I have served you, and how your herd has fared with me. You had little before my coming, but your herd has increased and multiplied, and Jehovah has blessed you since I arrived. So when will I do something for my own house? Then he said, What should I give you? And Jacob said, You will give me nothing whatsoever. If you will do this one thing for me, I will resume sheep herding your flock and guarding it. I will pass through your whole flock today. You set aside from there every sheep speckled and with colored patches, and every dark brown sheep among the young rams, and any other colored patch and speckled one among the sheep goats. From now on, these must become my wages. and my righteousness must speak for me on a future day when you come to look over my wages. Every one that is not speckled and colored patched among the she-goats and dark brown among the young rams will be considered stolen if it is with me." To this Laban said, "That is fine. Let it be according to your word." Then on that day he set aside the he-goats striped and colored patches, and all the she-goats speckled and colored patched, every one in which there was any white, and every one dark brown among the young rams, and gave them into the care of his sons. After that he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob was sheep herding the flocks of Laban that remained over. Jacob then took freshly cut staff of the storax, almond, and plane trees, and he peeled white spots in them by exposing the white wood of the staffs. Then he placed the staffs that he had peeled in front of the flock in the gutters, in the drinking troughs, where the flocks would come to drink. Then they might get into the heat in from them when they came to drink. So the flocks would get into heat and in front of the staffs, and the flocks would produce striped, speckled, and colored patch offspring. Then Jacob separated the young rams and turned the flocks to face the striped ones, and all the dark brown ones among the flocks of Laban. Then he separated his own flocks and did not mix them with the Laban flocks. And whenever the robust animals would get into heat, Jacob would place the staffs in the gutters before the eyes of the flocks, that they might get into heat by the staffs. But when the animals were weak, he would not place the staffs there. So the weak ones always came to Laban's, but the robust ones became Jacob's. And the man grew very prosperous, and he acquired great flocks, and male and female servants, and camels and donkeys. Chapter 31. In time he heard that the sons of Laban were saying, "Jacob has taken everything that belonged to our father, and from what belonged to our father he has amassed all this wealth." When Jacob would look at the face of Laban, he saw that his attitude toward him was not what it used to be. Finally Jehovah said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will continue with you." Then Jacob sent a message to Rachel and Leah to come out to the field to his flock, and he said to them, "I have seen that your father's attitude towards me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You yourselves certainly know that I have served your father with all my power. And your father has tried to cheat me and has changed my wages 10 times. But God has not allowed him to do me harm. If on the one hand he would say, 'The speckled ones will be your wages,' then the whole flock produced speckled ones. But if on the other hand he would say, 'The striped ones will be your wages,' then the whole flock produced striped ones. So God kept taking your father's livestock away from him and giving it to me. Once, when the flock got into heat, I raised my eyes and saw in a dream that the he-goats mating with the flock were striped, speckled, and spotty. Then the angel of the true God said to me in the dream, 'Jacob,' to which I said, 'Here I am.' And he continued, 'Raise your eyes, please, and see that all he-goats mating with the flock are striped, speckled, and spotty, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the true God of your Bethel, when you're anointed a pillar, and when you made a vow to me. Now get up, go out of this land and return to the land of your birth.' At this Rachel and Leah answered him, 'Is there any share left for us to inherit in our father's house? Does he not consider us as foreigners, since he has sold us and has been using up all the money given for us? All the riches that God has taken away from our father are ours and our children's. So then, do everything that God told you to do.' Then Jacob got up and lifted his children and his wives on the camels, and he began driving all his herd, all the goods that he had accumulated, the livestock in his possession that he had accumulated in Padan-aram, to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. Now Laban has gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole the teraphim statues that belonged to her father. Moreover, Jacob outwitted Laban the Aramean, for he had not told him that he was running away. And he ran away and crossed the river, he and all he had. Then he headed towards the mountainous region of Gilead. On the 3rd day, Laban was told that Jacob had run away. So he took his brothers with him and pursued him for a journey of 7 days, and caught up with him in the mountainous regions of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night, and said to him, "Be careful about what you say to Jacob, either good or bad." So Laban approached Jacob, as Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountain, and Laban had encamped with his brothers in the mountainous region of Gilead. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? Why have you restored to outwitting me and carrying my daughters off like captives taken by the sword? Why did you run away secretly and outwit me and not tell me? If you had told me, I would have sent you away with rejoicing and with songs, with tambourine and with harp. But you did not give me a chance to kiss my grandchildren and my daughters. You have acted foolishly. It is in my power to do harm to you, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Be careful about what you say to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you have gone because you have been longing to return to the house of your father. But why have you stolen my gods?" Jacob answered Laban, "It was because I was afraid, for I said to myself, 'You might take your daughters away from me by force. Anyone whom you find your gods will not live. Before our brothers, examine what I have and take what is yours.'" But Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into the tent of Jacob and into the tent of Leah and into the tent of the two slave girls, but did not find them. Then he came out to Leah's tent and went into Rachel's tent. Meanwhile, Rachel had taken the teraphim statues and put them into the woman's saddle basket of the camel, and she was sitting on them. So Laban searched through the whole tent, but did not find them. Then she said to her father, "Do not be angry, my lord, because I am not able to get up before you, for the customary thing with women is upon me." So he searched on carefully, but did not find the teraphim statues. At that, Jacob became angry and began to criticize Laban. Jacob then said to Laban, "What is my offense? And for what sin are you both hotly pursuing me? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your house? Put it here in front of my brothers and your brothers, and let them decide between the two of us. During these 20 years that I have been with you, your sheep and your goats never miscarried, and I never ate the rams of your flock. I did not bring you any animal torn by wild beasts. I would stand the loss of it myself. Whether the animal was stolen by day or was stolen by night, you would demand compensation from me. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and sleep would flee from my eyes. This makes 20 years for me in your house. I have served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you kept changing my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the one whom Isaac fears, had not been on my side, you would not have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and all the toil of my hands, and that is why he reproved you last night." Then Laban answered Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, and the children my children, and the flock my flock, and everything you are looking at is mine and my daughters. What can I do today against these or against their children who they have borne? Now come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and it will serve as a witness between us." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Then Jacob said to his brothers, "Pick up stones." And they took stones and made a pile. After that they ate there on the pile of stones. And Laban began calling it Jegar-Shahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Laban then said, "This pile of stones is a witness between me and you today." This is why he named it Galeed. And the watchtower, for he said, "Let Jehovah keep watch between you and me when we are out of each other's sight. If you mistreat my daughters, and if you start taking wives in addition to my daughters, though there is no man with us, remember that God will be a witness between you and me." Laban went on to say to Jacob, "Here is this pile of stones, and here is the pillar that I have erected between you and me. This pile of stones is a witness, and the pillar is something that bears witness that I will not pass beyond this pile of stones to bring harm to you, and you will not pass beyond this pile of stones and this pillar to bring harm to me. Let the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us." And Jacob swore by the one whom his father Isaac fears. After that, Jacob offered a sacrifice in the mountain and invited his brothers to eat bread. So they ate and spent the night in the mountain. However, Laban got up early in the morning and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. Chapter 32. Jacob then went on his way, and the angels of God met up with him. As soon as he saw them, Jacob said, "This is the camp of God." So he named the place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to the brother Esau in the land of Seir, their territory of Edom. And he commanded them, "This is what you will say to my lord to Esau. This is what your servant Jacob says. I have resided with Laban for a long time until now, and I have acquired bulls, donkeys, sheep, and the male and female servants. And I send this message to inform my lord in order to find favor in your eyes." In time, the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We met your brother Esau, and he is now on his way to meet you, and there are 400 men with him." And Jacob became very frightened and anxious, so he divided the people who were with him, as well as the flocks, the cattle, and the camels into 2 camps. He said, "If Esau attacks the one camp, then the other camp will be able to escape." After that, Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Jehovah, you who are saying to me, 'Return to your land and to your relatives, and I will deal well with you,' I am unworthy of all the loyal love and of all the faithfulness that you have shown toward your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Save me, I pray you, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid of him that he may come and attack me, as well as the mothers and their children. And you have said, 'I will certainly deal well with you, and I will make your offsprings like the grains of sands of the sea, which are too numerous to count.' And he spent the night there. Then he took some of his possessions as a gift for Esau his brother, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 female sheep, 20 rams, 30 camels nursing their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 full-grown male donkeys. He handed them over to his servants, one drove after another, and he said to his servants, 'Cross over ahead of me, and you are to set a space between one drove and the next.' He also commanded the first one, 'In case Esau my brother should meet you and ask, "To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and to whom do these ahead of you belong?" then you should say, "To your servant Jacob. It is a gift sent to my lord to Esau, and look, he himself is also behind us." And he commanded also the second, the third, and all those following the droves, according to this word, you are to speak to Esau when you meet him. And you should also say, "Here is your servant Jacob behind us." For he said to himself, "If I appease by sending a gift ahead of me, then afterward when I see him, he will give me a kindly reception." So the gift crossed over ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. Later, during that night, he rose and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants and his 11 young sons and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. So he took them and brought them across the stream, and he brought over everything else he had. Finally, Jacob was left by himself. Then a man began to wrestle with him until the dawn broke. When he saw that he had not prevailed over him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated during his wrestling with him. After that he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." To this he said, "I am not going to let you go until you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" To which he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have contended with God and with men, and you have at last prevailed." In return, Jacob inquired, "Tell me, please, your name." However, he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" With that, he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life was preserved." And the sun rose up upon him, and as soon as he passed by Penuel, he was limping because of his hip. That is why to this day the sons of Israel has not accustomed to eat the thigh sinew, which is on the socket of the hip joint, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip joint by the thigh sinew. Chapter 33. Now Jacob raised his eyes and saw Esau coming, and 400 men were with him. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servant and their children in front, Leah and her children after them, and Rachel and Joseph behind them. Then he himself went ahead of them and bowed down to the earth 7 times as he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to him, and he embraced him and kissed him, and they burst into tears. When he raised his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are those with you?" To which he said, "The children with whom God has favored your servant." At that the female servants came forward with their children and bowed down, and Leah too came forward with her children and then bowed down. Then Joseph came forward with Rachel, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What is your purpose of all this camp of travelers that I have met?" He replied, "In order to find favor in the eyes of my lord." Then Esau said, "I have a great many possessions, my brother. Keep what is yours." However, Jacob said, "No, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, you must take my gift from my hand, because I brought it so that I could see your face. And I have seen your face as though seeing God's face, and that you received me with pleasure. Take, please, the gift conveying my blessing that was brought to you. For God has favored me, and I have everything I need." And he continued to urge him, so that he took it. Later Esau said, "Let us move out and go, and let me go in advance of you." But he said to him, "My lord is aware that the children are delicate, and that in my care are sheep and cattle nursing their young. If they are driven too quickly for one day, then the whole flock will die. Let my lord please go on ahead of his servant, but I will continue the journey more slowly at the pace of my livestock and of my children until I come to the lord of Seir." Then Esau said, "Please, let me leave some of my people with you." To this he said, "Why do this? Just let me find favor in the eyes of my lord." So that day Esau went on his way back to Seir, and Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and he built a house for himself, and he made shelters for his herd. That was why he named the place Succoth. After journeying from Padan-aram, Jacob arrived safely at the city of Shechem in the land of Canaan, and he set up his camp near the city. Then he acquired a portion of the field where he pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of money. There he set up an altar and called it God, the God of Israel. Chapter 34. Now Dinah, Jacob's daughter by Leah, used to go out to spend time with the young women of the land. When Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, a chieftain of the land, saw her, and he took her and lay down with her and violated her. And he became very attached to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he fell in love with the young woman and spoke persuasively to her. Finally, Shechem said to Hamor his father, "Get me this young woman to be my wife." When Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter, his sons were with his herd in the field, so Jacob kept silent until they returned. Later Hamor, Shechem's father, went out to speak with Jacob, but the sons of Jacob heard about it and returned from the field right away. They were offended and very angry because he had disgraced Israel by lying down with Jacob's daughter, something that should not have been done. Hamor spoke with them, saying, "My son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife, and from marriage alliances with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You may dwell with us, and the land will become available for you. Dwell and carry on trade in it and settle in it." Then Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask me. You can demand for me a very high bride price and gift. I am willing to give whatever you may say to me. Just give me the young woman as a wife." And Jacob's sons answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully because he had defiled Dinah their sister. They said to them, "We cannot possibly do such a thing, to give our sister to a man who is not circumcised, for that is a disgrace to us. We can only consent on this one condition, that you become like us and circumcise all your males. Then we will give you our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you do not listen to us and get circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go." Their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. The young man did not delay in doing what they asked, because he found delight in Jacob's daughters, and he was the most honorable of the whole house of his father. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the city gate and spoke to the men of their city, saying, "These men wish to be at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and carry on trade in it, for the land is large enough to accommodate them. We can take their daughters as wives, and our daughters we can give to them. Only on this one condition will the men consent to dwell with us in order to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised, just the way they are circumcised. Then will not their then will not their possessions, their wealth, and their livestock be ours? So let us give them our consent, that they may dwell with us." All those young going out by the gate of the city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and all the males got circumcised, all those going out of the city gate. However, on the third day, when they were still in pain, 2 sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and went into an unsuspecting city and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with a sword, and then they took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. Jacob's other sons came upon the slain men and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks, their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field. They also took all their possessions, captured all their little children and their wives, and plundered everything in the houses. At this, Jacob said to Simeon and to Levi, "You have brought great trouble on me in making me a stench to inhabitants of the land, to the Canaanites and the Perizzites. I am a few in number, and they will certainly gather together to attack me, and I will be annihilated, I and my house." But they said, "Should anyone treat our sister like a prostitute?" Chapter 35. After that, God said to Jacob, "Rise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, and make an altar there to the true God, who appeared to you when you were running away from Esau, your brother." Then Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods that are in your midst, and cleanse yourselves and change your garments, and let us rise up and go up to Bethel. There I will make an altar to the true God, who answered me in the days of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods that they had, and all the earrings that were in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the big tree that was close to Shechem. When they traveled on, the terror of God struck the cities around them, so they did not chase after the sons of Jacob. Jacob eventually came to Luz. This is Bethel in the land of Canaan, he and all the people with him. There he built an altar and called the place El Bethel, because there the true God had revealed himself to him when he had run away from his brother. Later, Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried at the foot of Bethel under an oak, so he named it El-Alon Bakuth. God appeared to Jacob once again while he was coming from Padan Aram and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel will be your name." And he began to call him Israel. God further said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and become many. Nations and congregations of nations will come from you, and kings will descend from you. As for the land that I have given to Abraham and to Isaac, to you I will give it, and to your offspring after you I will give the land." Then God went up from him at the place where he had spoken with him. So Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. And Jacob continued to call the place where God was spoken with him Bethel. Then they pulled away from Bethel, and while they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, and her labor was very difficult. But while she was struggling to deliver the child, the midwife said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you will have the son also." Just as her life was slipping away, for she was dying, she named him Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a pillar over her grave. It is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. After that, Israel pulled away and pitched his tent a distance beyond the tower of Eder. Once while Israel was dwelling in that land, Reuben went and lay down with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. So there were 12 sons of Jacob. The sons of Leah were Jacob's first Reuben, then Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. And the sons by Bilhah, Rachel's servant, were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, were Gad and Asher. These are Jacob's sons who were born to him in Padan Aram. Jacob eventually came to where his father Isaac was at Mamre, to Kiriath-arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and also Isaac resided as foreigners. Isaac lived to be 180 years old. Then Isaac breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. After a long and satisfying life, and his son Esau and Jacob buried him. I am going to end it there. Very interesting situations, and I mean, you know, being in our modern times and reading back to these old times, it's pretty very different situations and, you know, timelines that Jacob had, and, you know, with all the servants and slaves, and how siblings would treat each other, and, you know, with the gifts and all that. It's just different customs. It's just very interesting to see. I always find it very interesting, the Old Testament. And so thank you for following along and tuning into the channel. I'm going to continue on the next video, which will be the 6th video, which I am very happy that I started this YouTube channel. It's actually been fun for me, and I'm enjoying it very much, and it gives me an excuse and encouraging me more to read the Bible every day. So I will continue to be uploading all these, and we are still in Genesis after 5 videos. I'm trying to keep it to a minimum of like around 30 minutes. I don't want it to be an hour long. It's a little too much for a video, I believe. And so we'll continue on with Genesis 36. Like I said, there's only 50 chapters, so we're almost to the end of Genesis, and then we'll continue on until we finish the whole Bible. So I hope you are all doing good out there, wherever you are, and thanks for tuning in. You guys take care.